We're live, or at least the computer says we're live. I can see my audio moving on the camera, which is really nice. And I'm going to look at the chat in like 2 seconds and see if we're live or not. So anyway, yeah. Happy Monday, everybody. It's good to see you. This is my Monday morning live show for the patrons. I get to hang out with you guys, you wonderful patrons, and take a break from all the work I did all weekend. I look forward to Mondays so much now because this is like the lightest lifting I have to do to make almost anything. Especially like changing the setups now, because what I'm able to do, because I don't like trusting the whatever is actually recorded like during the live stream. So I separately record the stream itself and then push that. So it's a nice clean like audio stream and everything. So anyway, hi everybody. Let's see who is hanging out with us right now. I'm going to go on my phone. I'm going to hope that there's zero feedback this time because, you know, I have turned off the amp. The amp behind me was on last time, which I think was what was causing that. If I don't flick these little switches down beforehand, there's two big speakers behind me that were probably causing some kind of feedback to this mic because I'm a dummy. And I check everything that is like a recording device, but then I don't check the things that I'm listening to music on when I come in the morning and make my coffee. So let's go to meow and then go to, oh, it's unlisted. I keep going the old way to go look at live show stuff, but I actually have to go to this because the monitor for this is way over there and I can see everybody. I can see everybody's chats going tick, 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 but it's like 10 feet away. It's on my desk. It's far too far away for me to actually see what everybody's saying. That's why I have to do this on my phone. Because I'm not going to sit at my desk and do this because that would suck. Let's go to, oh yeah, I can see I'm visually there. Let's just see if I am in the chat. Hey, we are fantastic. We're live and the audio is rocking nice and clear. Fantastic, fantastic. All right, great. Brian Sheen's here, Nick Butler's here, Dan Fox here, Captain Ferrite's here, Proven22X is here, Kevin Mitchell's here, Matt Tarpley's here, Paul Shorten's here, Ralph Sheeman's here, Alan Newdall's here, Mike Grimshaw's here. Holy moly, we got we had 36 people. No, wait, that's mess. Yeah, it's 36 people. We did it. We broke 30. Oh my God, it's working. I'm so excited that so many of you, like, I knew, like, intrinsically, I know if I do something consistently enough, then everybody gets in the rhythm of doing it. You know what I mean? Like, if we do this enough, then it'll actually happen properly, which is what I want. But it's rewarding to see that actually happen, which is great. 38. Oh my God, we might break 40 this time. I'd be so happy. Who else is here? Gilman's here. Seth Draylock's here. Peter Playing with Lead. Brian is here. That is my new... Oh, I wish more of you guys had, like, fun to, like... Peter Playing with Lead. Brian is now my new favorite YouTube name. Garden Goth is here. Non-Sleeper and Occasional Thinker is here. Ignovius is here. Kim Glued is here. Disgruntled Orc is here. Oh my God, I'm so happy. It should be unlisted. Ah, crap. You know what happened? I didn't set it unlisted this time. Nuts. I haven't set to subscribers. That's why. There should be people that, okay, well, whatever. I screwed this one up then. Damn it. It's supposed to be patrons only. This is what happens when I schedule something from home and then come to the office and don't do it. I missed a trick, and that's why there's so many people here. So I got a false positive, but you know what? I will live with this mistake. We're now live. I'm not going to go back. I guess I'm hanging out with everybody today. So I'm just going to change. I'm going to quickly change the title of this because I guess we're now doing this with everybody because I'm a moron. Ah, damn it. That's okay. I guess we'll have maybe once a month we should do that then. Maybe once a month we just have an open show with everybody and everybody gets to hang out, and then the rest of the shows are not everybody. So yeah, it is probably subscribers only. I got so excited there, but actually it just turns up I'm a dummy, which tracks. That actually is more on brand for me than anything else. So let's just edit the title and go back to Monday Learning. Let's just put it as once a month free live show. And that will be the thing. This is what happens. Everybody gets to ask me questions today, and then damn it. But we're still going to start with this is how I'll parse it. This is how I'll continue to make this sort of okay and right. Is most of the questions I'm going to take will still be from the patron questionnaire, which not everybody has access to, which is the way I will fix this sort of. So let's start off with some questions from the mailbag and see how everybody's doing. And you know what I'm going to do right now? Ah, screw it. I'm just going to start taking questions. So the first one today, Albert Nguyen is going to ask, what do you think keeps an IP making mediocre stuff later on, like Aliens and Terminator? And what do you think the magic variable is that refreshes an IP like Furiosa? Okay, so this is actually pretty timely because this is one of those ones where I think I touched on this in the last live show, and I think this, if you guys want to really hear my thoughts on this, go to that Grimdark Media video that I did about art versus products. Is mediocre sequels come when sequels come too close together. I would actually argue that Aliens has never had a mediocre sequel. Aliens is an anthology collection of films because up until Ridley Scott was like somehow tapped as sort of like the creator of Aliens, which he's not. H.R. Geiger is the art director for that. It had a different director every single time. The first 4 Alien movies are a different director. First, it's Ridley Scott, then it's James Cameron, then it's David Fincher, and then a fourth one is Jean Gier. So I can't pronounce his name. French guy, great director. He did Kiss the Dragon, I think, and a couple other great movies. And so what happens is when you try and make films too close together, that's where you get the issue, actually anything too close together. That product cycle repeating too often to try and re-engage your customer base and sell them something that is like a 4-quadrant analysis of what you think they liked about the last thing. That's where you start to get like the faded photocopy metaphor. If you ever made a photocopy of something on like an old style photocopy machine, the more you photocopied a document, which means not photocopying the original, but you made a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy, the more watered down that image becomes, the more blurry all the lines get. Because when you're just regurgitating the same thing, you run out of ways to like make it feel fresh and like to change the format out. And that's to me where you get these like mediocre sequels. I think George Miller did so well with Fury Road. One, because it was a massive gamble. Like the studio gave him like unlimited money and time basically. And 2, because he had 20 years in between films. Like, actually, I think it's more like 30 years in between films. And George Miller made a bunch of different movies. And he is making Furiosa, which I think is fantastic. I actually am less, I don't know, the trailer for Furiosa makes me slightly nervous because some of the vehicle shots don't look practical. They look more CG, and I think CG is an issue with him capturing the magic he captures, because the magic of George Miller is all of those vehicle shots are practical, and there is some digital effects in Fury Road. Like all the environmental stuff is digitally added, like the giant, they didn't actually create a giant sand hurricane, you know what I mean? Like in the middle of the film. But for the most part, the actual like vehicular stunts and stuff are just that he's a maniac and he made like he put people in danger and did these insane stunts, which is his like brand. And leaving 30 years in between it, what you have is you have the advent of technology allowing him to do something even more impressive with what he's good at. And what's interesting is he became a CGI director in between there, making Happy Feet 1 and 2, which arguably are very interesting post-apocalyptic movies as well that you just get to watch with your kids. And so I think it is actually that allowing something to settle for a while makes it feel great. When you address it properly, you have time to like ruminate on what made it good. You have time to, I think, capture the spirit of what it is, and then you have time to present it in a way that's both, you know, a love letter to the old part and also good on its face. I think we have 2 examples of that in gaming that are really powerfully sort of present right now. Is Games Workshop took the time to make Necromunda and Blood Bowl both really, really well, but that's also because you have a huge gap in time in between those 2 products, right? Like Necromunda didn't have an edition after Fnatic folded. So I think the last time they're making something really new for Necromunda is like 2007. So you have like 10 years in between those product lines. And the same with Blood Bowl. Blood Bowl didn't get a new box set. Like they reprinted the Blood Bowl box set quite a bit. The 2003 one, I think, is just a reprint of the 96, 95, 96 one. And so because you don't have a new edition of it, and you definitely don't have new models, apart from like some metal Fnatic era models, you get when it comes time to make it again, one, you have people who grew up with it, were helping you work on it. Two, you have tons of like, not just information, but tons of like, I think, analysis and thought into what people loved about it, because people talk about it endlessly and pick it apart and dissect it. And so when it comes around to doing it again, you have this thing that feels, even though it's new and it's made with new technology and it's made in a different way, it feels correct, if that makes sense. Let's see if the chat thinks I'm completely out of my rocker, but I think it's time in between is going to be the biggest hallmark, because it gives you the opportunity really to like marinate on these things. Yeah, I definitely screwed this up. Let's see what's going on here. 36 is almost 100. Yeah, I completely screwed this up. Ian Johnson says, it's all about consistency plus your content's so good. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, everybody else. No, who else is here? Non-patrons who are here today, you are welcome. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for being so cool about this. Brandon Michael Javier is here. Who else is here? Kim Glut's here. Perfect time to join the Patreon. James Mass is here. Stitching Counts here. Hey, wait, this isn't a recording? No, this isn't a recording. This is live. We all love you, Ash, no matter what. Thank you, Treadhead's Workshop, for me screwing it up. Marky Battle Bastard says, hi, Ash, walking the hound as I'm watching this. Cool, man. That's good that you're outside walking the hound. Jean-Pierre Jeunet directed Aliens 4. Thanks, Nick. I love that Nick is my constantly present, because the one thing I never did, although I was video store adjacent for a lot of my life. I had a lot of friends who worked in video stores. I never worked in a video store, and Nick is my constant, like, former video store employee who is definitely on the ball with all of these little details that I'm missing in the moment, because I don't have like a chance to actually look it up or do anything because I'm doing this. Non-sleeper and occasional thinker says it keeps freezing on me. I'm so sorry. What else we got here? The term of a copy of a copy of a copy also causes data loss. That's interesting. But following my example, Dread recent movie was a huge improvement over Dread. Absolutely. I think that's like a huge, that's another huge example, is you have someone taking a film, or not even a film, but a property, and having like the kind of false start of the Dread like Stallone movie as like a jumping off point. You get to see what they didn't get right. Like the biggest key difference between Carl Urban's Dread and Stallone's Dread is Carl Urban never takes off the helmet, which is just like, that should be the law. And in the 90s, it was made so cynically. It was like, no, we have Sylvester Stallone. We're paying him millions of dollars. We're not going to show his face. Like, this guy's a star. The whole point you pay him all this money is to put him in this movie and have his helmet be ginormous. Captain Ferret says, so what's left for GW to reboot? That's a great question, because when we talk about like the serialized nature of like game media and what they've done to mine our nostalgia, because I did talk about that in the Art to Product video that I did with Jay, which is not I'm referencing it a lot, but like, it definitely, because it hits on so many things, it hits on film, TV, games, it just felt like it shows how money and stuff becoming products creates a different experience for us as like the end user. You have this like series basically of releases from Workshop over the last 15 years that is them realizing the most valuable thing they own is their intellectual property, and going to the drawing board and saying, okay, so how do we, if we're going to 4-quadrant our customers, one of the customer boxes is going to be people who played in the 90s and early 2000s, who are at the right age category now to have like the fattest wallet, basically, of like a good blend of free time to disposable income. How do we access that interest level? How do we access that box? And the easiest way to do it is to give us something, to give us Dread. I think that's probably the best example. To take something that was never fully explored or realized in the past, and using today's modern technology, give it to us in a way that is so compelling that we're like, holy shit, I'm gonna spend a ton of money on that. I'm gonna, like, this is where my fun money goes for the next little while. And I think they captured that with Necromunda. You saw it all through 40K releases with the Gene Stealer cults. Like, you have these abandoned ideas, the Custodes, Knights. Like, these aren't new things. This is Games Workshop taking abandoned ideas, but that have like a real draw at one of the boxes of the quadrants that they're attacking, like monetarily, and figuring out like, oh, I can definitely like mine that. So we have to, if we ask ourselves what's left, you don't have a lot left that is really explored, I think, in the same way. Like, they kind of made a stab at Gorka Morka with Speed Freaks, but it was too much of a, it was really too much of a, and this is a big, I think a big kudos to Mike. It was too much of a Gaslands clone. They took Gaslands and basically said, like, well, that's wildly popular. We have an old abandoned thing that we could just basically patch this onto. And they did like a 1-box release, and it never went anywhere because the game was like 3 pages of rules. Like, it was almost cynically done to give you a reason to push their car models around, and they released 4 new car models and then just instantly abandoned it. They didn't give you any real reason to keep playing the game. It was just like, well, what would a cool way be to sell these 4 new car kits that we want to develop? Hey, look, this thing's really popular right now. Let's do it. So that's kind of off the table because I feel like the internal conversation about that would be like, no, we tried Gorka Morka. It's not going to work right now. We have more time to wait on that one. I could see them giving the Battlefleet Gothic a Horus Heresy treatment just because they could do it in like a Warhammer Quest kind of way where it's a bottle game. It's not wholly dependent upon a huge amount of like ancillary stuff. And the Horus Heresy is a great excuse for them to make it a limited run. I feel like they're leaning into that right now where they're like, no. It's not a huge risk because we won't have customers saying, let's wait for the Eldar, let's wait for the other alien race or whatever. Because, no, it's the Horus Heresy. That's never going to be the key feature. If you want to play this game now, this is what it's going to be. Come get it. And we don't have to go anywhere outside those lines. We can have like a tighter design style and thing. You could do that with like the Siege or like the Solar War. Like I could see them doing like a Battlefleet Gothic, the Solar War, where it's the last sort of like space battles before the Siege of Terra, and that's your like your bottle that you're going to put the game inside of. So you only have to do X or Y things. They could do big bespoke like projects, like you could do the phalanx, you know what I mean? You could do like the big like thing. You could do the orbital plates as like a defense thing. Like there's a lot of like cool stuff you could do with something like that. And even if it's not the Horus Heresy, setting it somewhere else. I think the Horus Heresy, because they're still like marketing the books and the sort of like eventual maybe Amazon series they do with it. I don't know. We'll see if the Amazon series does the Horus Heresy. It feels too big. That's too big a gamble because you'd have to finish it at some point, and it would be like Game of Thrones if they didn't do it right. You know what I mean? Like it would all fall apart. So Gothic, I could see them doing. They don't like that is the thing is they have for 10 years now almost spent almost all their remaining currency on that box of the quadrant. And they're almost rubbing up against having to make something new. They are currently gambling on Warhammer Fantasy Battle fans. Like that's the current thing I think they're gambling on is, can we repackage this abandoned product line? Have we given enough time for there to be like the people who were never going to buy it again from us have burned off and found other things and have other interests? And where do we capture that like middle ground of people who maybe weren't playing it at the time or were put off by it and bring them back into the fold? I think that's their next gamble, but we'll see how that goes. Because they've been hitting the 40K drum so hard, they're almost out of notes to play. You know what I mean? Like, there isn't a lot left that they can do. What else we got? So what's left for GW to reboot? Lorcan Nagel says, I like the Stallone Dread a lot ways more, most of the Hammerstein. Yeah, the fact that the Hammerstein robot only gets like 2 minutes of screen time in that movie, but makes such an impression is incredible. The ABC Warrior is fantastic. Nick Butler says, equally comic styles change as artists change, so movie styles can change because the artists change. Absolutely. Sam Weatherden says, I've signed up for the Patreon now, but keep the great work. Thanks so much, Sam. Also, the sound keeps stuttering for me, so I'll catch up later. I'm sorry that it's not the best stream. Jack Fletcher says Battlefleet Gothic and Mordheim. Mordheim's a funny one. I honestly feel like you couldn't do Mordheim today. And it's not just because Mordheim was great, because it was great, but I think it would be like trying to reform Pink Floyd with new members. Like you can't bring a collection of people together that are that strange, or like the Talking Heads, or like, God, I'm dating myself. You couldn't make Run the Jewels again. You know what I mean? Like you couldn't make really make the Wu-Tang Clan in the 90s again. Like, you can't bring a collection of people together in the right place at the right time to make the right kind of music for a moment all the time. Because Mordheim was made during like premillennial tension. It's a great Tricky album. I'm just gonna keep mixing my metaphors apparently today, but you can't make an end of the world prophetic doom 1999 game not in 1999, if that makes sense. I think you could do something Mordheim adjacent, and that's what I think they will do. They're trying to build a location in Age of Sigmar right now, I think, that can capture that essence a little. The design style of like the humans in Age of Sigmar is moving to like Mordheim adjacent, but you've had every artist and designer from that period move on. I think that, honestly, of all the games they've ever produced, the one that would be the hardest to navigate from like a nostalgia point of view would be Mordheim. I honestly don't think you could make it today, and I don't think they'll try. I think that's one that we're just not going to see again. We're going to see an adjacent style property, like a Dark Tide themed. You know what I mean? Like something like that where they move it along, because I just don't think it would land the same. Like, I don't think you can have it land the same. I don't think that would be, as much as I would want it to happen, the people who are so similar like creative process, like John Blanche and Alex Boyd and Thomas Piernan, like they were capturing a moment in history in a game. You know what I mean? Which is very hard to do. And I think that's their accomplishment. Like, trying to recreate that accomplishment would be like trying to, like, I don't know, trying to make Dark Side of the Moon again. Like, it's not, you can't really do it. Like, you couldn't make a new Dark Side of the Moon. All right, let's go to the patron mailbag now. I've been talking to the chat for a minute. All right, so we've got Dario from Norway who says, miniature games are dope, but modern board games are also pretty rad. What's your most recent favorite, and which ones are you looking to get to the table most often? So actually two, because they have been, I think, like, and one of these is a classic that just got remade again, and the other one was relatively recent. I just really liked it because I like the models and the theme. The first one is the new Betrayal at House on the Hill. I think Betrayal. Yeah, Betrayal. The one where you're playing as like a bunch of like procedurally generated heroes, and you go in as a procedurally generated monster. I played that one on a live stream at HowlCon this year, and I was so impressed by how much better parsed the information was, and how much better just like the procedurally generated elements went together. I immediately ordered a copy. I hadn't ordered that copy because, like, that was one of those board games that everyone seemed to own. So every time you went to a party where we're going to end up playing a board game and drinking, or like went to somebody's house and a bunch of people got together to play a board game, there was always a copy lying around. But the new edition, which I think came out last year, it is like really impressive. Not from like it does something new, because it just does what Betrayal does. It's just doing it really, really well. And they've done a really good job at creating distilling the experience and having the rules get out of the way of the game. That's always my problem with board game stuff. I hate pausing the game to look shit up. I hate not being able to intuitively follow along and be surprised and delighted by the mechanics of the game. I need the mechanics to be simple enough that I'm immersed in the gameplay experience. And I need models, which obviously this game has. That's the first one. The second one would be the new Thing game, which I've played a couple times now, and I'm getting ready to paint and play with Jay because I really want to do that one for the wintertime, because I think it's just the right time to do it. The models are fantastic. The gameplay feels like the movie, and yeah, again, it doesn't get in its own way too much to give you that feeling of like isolation and dread. It's one of the first things I'm painting it right now because it's one of the first things I want to film in the third room that we don't film in a lot right now, although I filmed it a ton before I'd finished the soundstage, which I have only been filming in for 2 weeks, so I shouldn't say we don't film in any of these places a lot. I just haven't been filming in many places a lot right now. Yeah, I really want to get that one on the table. Those are my two favorites right now. I love modern board games. There are a lot of, and the thing is, for me, if I'm going to do it for the channel, it has to be like miniature adjacent at least. Like, there has to be some visual draw, because I don't like token games and meeple games. I love them to play, but they don't stimulate me to make a video about them, if that makes sense, unless it's like a fun personalities all sitting together doing things thing. Skipping over, Loser from Ann Arbor, Michigan says, what model fell when you pulled the book off the shelf? Oh, it was just one of my other heroes. It was one of my Fighting Fantasy heroes fell down. Sorry. When I dropped when I got my Warlock of Firetop Mountain in the last one of these, I dropped one of my other Reaper Bones minis, which was great because Reaper Bones minis, as you all know, are one piece and don't explode. Brian Sheen from Toronto says, what was the first movie you saw that influenced your interest in grimdark media? I just mentioned it, The Thing. I watched The Thing Halloween of probably, geez, I always try and remember what year it was by what Halloween costume I wore that year. And I think that year I was either Batman or I think it was Batman. So it was probably like 89 or 90. Probably 89 because Batman, it was me being Batman because Michael Keaton Batman 89 had come out and I was obsessed with Batman for a minute. It's like 89 and it's like after I've been out trick-or-treating and it's like, this is a very 1989 moment. I've gone trick-or-treating by myself. Like I was 9 and I took my sister who was 5 and we went trick-or-treating around the neighborhood by ourselves. Like there was something magic about Halloween in the 80s because my parents were just like, yeah, go trick or treat, whatever, you'll be fine. Like we just went and walked the entire, like I probably walked 10 miles with my sister collecting candy from all these neighborhoods and then came home. And they threw my sister in bed because she was young. And I had like an hour. They were just like, yeah, go in the basement, eat some candy, hang out and do whatever. And I caught the beginning. Like I basically was watching City TV, which is a big thing in Toronto. The great movies on City TV after 9 o'clock would show like R-rated movies. And I'm watching The Thing and that music comes on from The Thing. And I have this moment where like, and I didn't, it's funny because I rewatched a whole bunch afterwards, but I kept missing the helicopter scene at the very beginning because I threw in a VHS tape and I recorded it off of like the TV because I could do that back then. I could just record whatever I was watching, which was great because you always memorize the commercials when you did that. And I remember like my mom and coming down to me like, you need to go to bed. And I'm like, no, I have to watch the end of this movie, please. And like begging her to like watch the end of this movie. And she let me because she would. And then like going to bed and just being obsessed. And my dad wasn't home because my dad back then was working in the Arctic. He's a mining engineer and he's working in Greenland. And we were getting all these pictures from Greenland and stuff from Greenland. And like he had all this crazy like experiences while he's out there, glaciers and stuff like that. And it just being this thing that like resonated with me. And the fact that you just didn't really know how it ended. Like you're 9, I'm watching an R-rated movie at City TV and you have no idea, like there's no good message. Like it's just like the heroes don't really win. They're all just freezing to death in the middle of a burning camp at the end of it all. And I remember it really affecting me and affecting my, like it just made me a lot tougher for watching films. Like I could kind of like stuff didn't scare me after that really, or like creep me out as much. I could get away with watching horror movies. And 2, it definitely like, it definitely resonated as like a thing that made me want to dig more into that stuff. Nick Butler says, I'd love to see them reboot Rogue Trooper and maybe Night Lords. Yes, those would be fantastic. Now, Peter Playing with Lead Brian says, I think in earlier studios were happy with to mess with IPs. Now fans are more vocal, like the internet. The owners of the IPs have more control. I would agree. Yeah, I would agree. I think that's really where that's where we get this like problem though, where the things we like almost immediately they try and turn them into brands. Like I think that was the Marvel DC problem, was Marvel blew up and the owners of DC were like, well, we have the other half of this. Why can't we make this same thing happen? And they really struggled to identify what people wanted out of that because you had 2 very different type of customers. Because almost intrinsically, one of these 2 things was darker than the other. Not that they didn't both explore like dark and interesting themes, but like there are far more anti-heroes in the DC universe than there are heroes. And the villains are far more often heroes than in like you have it a bit with the Brotherhood of Mutants, but like the Rogues Gallery in DC Comics becoming like the Suicide Squad, like that gets explored far more often. So them trying to just like create the same type of product but use DC characters, you saw it didn't work. Like it just didn't. People didn't accept it. And so that trying to like commodify our interests, I think is like, it's rough. Owning the IP gives you control, yes, but not understanding your audience and owning an IP, which is what production companies have, leads to a lot of mistakes. I'm not going far enough. Sean Slattery says, I'm hoping TOW launches the fantasy games, Dreadfleet and Mordheim. Yeah, I'm hoping so too. Dreadfleet is neat. It is a very neat bottle game and one of their first attempts at a bottle game. It obviously didn't sell very well and people didn't get it. But I do hope I hope the old world brings new interest in that universe. I honestly think to get interest in the world again, they need to get people writing novels. And that's weird to say because there are so many novels set in the old world, but you need a new compelling series. Like if you wanted to redo Mordheim, I think you needed to write at least 5 novels set around before, like you could do a Horus Heresy novel series about the fall of the Empire at that time and the coming of the Comet and Mordheim. And if you wrote them right and you got good authors to write them, you could then do a game based on that. But I think it's a very slow building up of a fan base in that regard for them to get it. I think it's interesting how, I don't know how they're going to do it, but I hope they have a bunch of like novelists right now writing books because I think that their IP is so firmly based on their intellectual property. You need more than one like avenue of attack to get a product line to really hit today. So we'll see. What else we got? Nick Butler says, what if Malevified their IP into small format single box sets and puzzle game boxes like Demon Ship but for Inquisitors? They did that. They just didn't do it in the UK, which is why you've never seen it. The Barnes & Noble exclusive game boxes are that. And they've been making them since pre-pandemic. And they kind of stopped making them for a minute because they didn't have, I think, the success that they wanted them to have. But the Space Marine Adventure games, all of the like dungeon crawler style games that they did, and then they basically made a light version of Kill Team and Warcry that were board game based and are actually really good. They're actually not bad. They had warband building in them. Like they're very light, but they are like arena battler games like that. They did one with all of the Warhammer Blackstone Fortress miniatures, like an arena battle game. They did a really good Street Fighter style game, the Arena of Blood, with like all the Khorne character models. There is a whole host of those games that honestly are not bad. Like I like a lot of them because they are like a light, like sort of like bottle game. Brian, which thing game are you playing? The most recent one. The one that's an actual license. It's not, there's a bunch, sorry, that should have been specific. It is The Thing. It's actually The Thing board game based on the films. So it has like a license. It's not Who Goes There or Outpost 31, which are the previous 2 film games that are based on the novella that The Thing is based on. This is the one that's actually based on the film and has like a miniature for like Keith David and Kurt Russell. Like it has actual character miniatures. Like you can get your actual like Thing models, which is why I bought it. Captain Freight says, let's see Batman hash. You'll see more pictures of him next week or this week on Thursday. I've got my next episode of RPJ coming out. Matt Trubley says, speaking of Betrayal at House on the Hill, is there going to be a re-upload of the Halcon stream for that? I don't think, actually, no, I think I might actually have I think that might have been shared with me. I have to check my email. I know he was going to do it, but I think the Extra Life guys actually saved the stream. So maybe I'll be able to get a hand on that, but I think they only sent me the 40K one. Yeah. I don't know if I have the other one, but I'll ask. I'll see if I can, because I would happily put it up because it was a really good game. It was a really, really good game. Lurkin Nickel says, now I'm picturing this kid Ash watching the Pirate TV show from Videodrome or Pirate TV Station. That's basically what City TV was. If you remember great movies on City TV, that was a whole era in Canadian film and television where like they showed everything. They showed like crazy, like my first watch through of Ghostbusters, of like Terminator, all that stuff was great movies on City TV. We were like kind of an edgy bunch back then. We would show basically anything on television if it was after 9 o'clock at night. And I definitely took advantage of that. That was not something I was afraid of. My first viewing of Alien was that way. And I would like beg on Friday nights to like, because it was great movies on Friday night. I would beg to stay up late on Friday night to watch those films, which I was allowed to. Ralph Shemin says, I'd love to see a reboot of Manowar, but I fear it's very unlikely. I also think it's probably going to be rather unlikely. Yeah, I just think it's probably going to be rather unlikely because they did Dreadfleet and it didn't land. And I think that there's like they like tick a box where they're like, if we tried something in this vein and it didn't work, then we're going to give it a bunch of time in between to try and let this like sit for a minute. So let's take more questions from the mailbag. And Matt Tillman says from Arizona, can a piece of fiction that does not have any kind of fantasy or science fiction element be grimdark media? A story I'm thinking of is set in the real world. The characters are grim, the topics, themes, and setting are dark. But there's nothing in the story that's beyond comprehension or massive in scale, aside from the sheer depravity that humans are capable of that's kept in the shadows. Is this still grimdark media? I don't think so, because one of the things that grimdark media has as a core element is we remove it from reality to be able to address those themes. And I think that's actually an important distinction, is the creation of that media is always set in some place that is removed from our own real world because the themes are so upsetting. Because otherwise it's just a psychological examination. Otherwise it's true crime, or it's a crime thriller, or it's a slasher movie. I don't think those are grim and dark because they lose the dystopian or subverted element that I think is key to grimdark media. I think that one of the reasons we're able to like laugh and enjoy that stuff sometimes, even when it is horrifying, is because we are given the safety of this setting being not quite our setting, right? Of being removed from reality. So we are able to then look at it in a way that makes like absorbing those themes more palatable, I guess, or even just like more possible. When stuff's based in reality, like I give you an example. One of my first thoughts when I was actually going through this list in my head was, should I put Chernobyl on this list for like video media? And then I thought, oh God, no, I'm not going to do that because real people were part of that. And also, even though it is a dramatization of events that happened, 40 years ago, it is also too close. Like, it's scary because the world almost ended. And for the most part, we never knew, you know what I mean? Most of us in the 80s are living this like blissful ignorance of those events happening and the sacrifices people made and the horror of what happened. That's not grim dark media to me. That's just a historical fiction, or historical dramatization. Whereas if you make it into something that happened or didn't happen, but like an examination of a what if, or if it did, then stuff like On the Beach or Threads actually makes it into this for me because it's a what if scenario. It's a society that did fall apart. It's Watchmen. You know what I mean? Where it's maybe it's grounded, but it has some element that allows us to step back from it and not be so completely drowned out emotionally that we can't perceive like the messages. I think that's the problem, is if it's too close to reality, we lose the messaging and we lose the ability to like look at the themes objectively, because it's just tragedy at that point. You know what I mean? It's just sadness. It doesn't allow us to, I think, the space, the room removed from it to be able to like absorb the messages and stuff. Who else is here? John Ashley Smith says, hey, from down the QEW. How you doing, man? Triple Digit Game says, please don't reboot Mordheim. Modern GW will never make it what people want it to be. I don't even think people know what they want it to be, because I think what people want is to experience something in 1999 again. And we were in a more innocent time in 1999. Could you imagine, like, when you actually think about what the world was like back then, pre 9/11, pre social media, pre-smartphone, pre super speed information highway. Yeah, you had a lot more time, I think, to marinate on subject matter. Jim Kermans is here. Fantastic. Discordal Work says, I enjoyed Gore Chosen. It was really good. Lorcan Eggle, wait, did GW do minis of Korn? But not that Korn. They did a lot of Korn. If it wasn't a Jonathan Davis fighting the dude with the blacked out. What was that guy's name? Shit. The bassist. The guy who's always the Wes Borland. It's not Jonathan Davis and Wes Borland fighting each other. It's all fun and games says maybe Lair of the Beast will herald a new approach to a lot of GW minis and a normal amount of board game at a board game price. Maybe. Bruce Games Rides says, good morning from Southern California. Good morning, Bruce Games Rides. Discernal says the Assassin Orum board game that came out with the Plastic Assassin was actually pretty good too. Yeah, shoot, what was that one called? Execution Overwatch or Deathwatch Deathwatch Overkill was the Deathwatch one. Execution Force. Yeah, it was pretty good. It was pretty good. It's funny. It was betrayed by old Chaos miniatures because the old Chaos Space Marine miniatures were, and they were not great. Disgruntled says, does Jay know that you're sitting in his chair? This isn't Jay's chair. This is just a chair. But yes, I like that is now something people think about. John Ashley Smith says, remember when everybody watched fashion television? I mean, sort of. I didn't watch fashion television, but I do remember the music part. It was like dun 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 dun. I do remember the music for fashion television because the commercials would always come on. Dun 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 dun. Logan Eagle says, I have very clear memories of discussions about whether the clouds from Chernobyl would reach Ireland. Yeah, I mean, that was a real. They kept everybody in, Western Europe basically indoors, all the way to France. People just stayed indoors. Just called City of Ember. That's a good one. Jason Chrysostomo says, Woot made it. Well, hello. And Brian Sheen says, I put forth Excalibur as a grimdark film. Yeah, you know what? That is not a bad. The Excalibur movie is very twisted. That movie is. It's funny because it's not remembered that. It's not bad enough. I shouldn't say bad enough. It's not budget enough or wacky enough to be in the pantheon of 80s and 90s fantasy movies that are completely batshit. But it is very grim and dark. There's another one called Voyage of the Navigator, maybe something of the Navigator, with this kid having visions. It's during the plague. And there's this kid having visions of these gauntlets falling, letting go of something and falling. And they're on a voyage through time. They travel into modern day at one point. It's something of the Navigator. I remember watching that and being blown away by how dark that was too. Mike Grimshaw, I just got back from, and we're talking about fashion television, man. What a callback. Yeah. Loser asked what I was playing this morning. Oh, what music I played this morning? I played Death Song by the Black Angels, which is probably one of the most grimdark albums I own, actually. This is a fantastic record. If you don't know the Black Angels, they're kind of like a... Jeez, I don't even know what you would call these guys. Like a grimdark rock band, maybe? They're not... they're a rock band. They're not like a metal band. They don't follow... Maybe a prog rock band would be what I would call them. And they just make very, they have a lot of driving chords, but they make very I don't know, ambient rock music that's very moody and dark. I actually did a Forbidden Psalm adventure based on a Black Angels song called Young Dead Men. Because my theme, it's funny because my gimmick basically when I write for somebody else's property now is I always sneak in something based on a song. So the expansion I did for the Wizards Conclave is actually from Burial's Blade from this sword album behind me. I wrote a 3-game mini campaign for the Wizards Conclave for Frostgrave based on a song from that album. And yeah, it was a song called Young Dead Men. I wrote a Forbidden Psalm mission based on that. But yeah, Death Song by the Black Angels. Fantastic album and highly recommended. Fantastic band. They haven't put anything together in the last while, but they've got, they have 2 albums that are absolute bangers that I love. And all their albums are good, but two albums that I really like. Flight of the Navigator is not the one I'm thinking of. Flight of the Navigator is one where the little kid discovers an alien orb and is chased through Arizona or Southern California, I think. It's something else, The Navigator. It's something The Navigator. Shit, I'll have to look it up. Sarah Jessica Parker was in Flight of the Navigator as a very young role. Also, that movie about witches that everybody loves. Crap. And now I've forgotten its name, but it's always talked about at Halloween. Anyway, I don't care. The Navigator on Medieval Odyssey. That's the one. Yeah, Brian Sheen got it. Yeah, it's The Navigator on Medieval Odyssey. It is a wild movie and incredibly dark. The grimmest, darkest fantasy movie is Terry Gilliam's Jabberwocky. It's on the list. Although I would argue that even Terry Gilliam's whatchamacallit, the oh shoot, I name just completely went out of my head. The Adventures of Baron von Munchausen is that. Even the Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus is that. It's a grimdark movie. What else we got? Triple Digit Game says, what would be the best existing product to be remade into a grimdark version of itself? Oh, if you took something that's shying away from those themes, but has a good setup, and that would be cool to be made, to be subverted in that way. I mean, I would say they chipped away at it with Marvel, with Logan, because Logan is grimdark Marvel. That whole Old Man Logan plotline, where there's a plague that wipes out the mutants, that basically every bad guy kind of succeeds and the world ends on Earth, and you're in a post-apocalyptic future. It's kind of unavoidable, and Hulk's a bad guy. That everything basically goes wrong. That is a good grimdark twist. I would love to see a game based on that. Lusa's going to play them on the way to work. Sweet, go for it. Brian Sheen says Dimmu Borgir's album Death Cult Armageddon's pretty grimdark. I mean, the name is, yeah. Hocus Pocus. That was the film I was thinking of. Thanks, Mike. I don't know why I couldn't summon Hocus Pocus into my brain. Probably because I haven't watched it in a while. Probably because having a ghost cat wasn't something I was thinking about a lot. Sharp Angle says, how did you like those first few games of Legion Imperialist? How does it compare to your memories of playing Space Marine Epic? Well, I'm excited up enough about them that I spent the morning with this rulebook writing out what the next bunch of stuff I need to paint for. Also, yellow legal pads. If anyone ever wants to drop off a giant thing of yellow legal pads, they're my favorite. Basically writing my 1,000-point list is already done for the Escalation League, so my next game stuff's already painted, but I don't want to be rushing to paint for the next one, so I was just making my paint plan this morning for what is the next things I need to paint to go to 1,500. And it's basically more tanks, a couple more infantry pieces to basically split off the what's an upgrade from what's a separate company. I learned the hard lesson about flying transports. Flying transports, I don't know if you know, but flying transports in Legions Imperialist, for those of you who read the rulebook now, if you don't have jump packs and they get shot down, you're just dead. Just no saves, you're just removed. You die in the crash, which is very cool and very funny, but makes flying transports very, dangerous. So I need to paint 2 more sets of Assault Marines to put into my Storm Eagles, so that I don't just instantly lose my units when they die. And I also learned that, if you're on foot, the independent rule for the Assault Marines works really well, but having them in transports doesn't work very well because your transports get, shackled to them, basically, because they don't activate at the same time without losing the activation of the guys inside the Rhinos. So I'm not going to probably do that again. So far, I think it's great. I do think, honestly, there are a few units I would personally tweak a little bit because they just don't feel like themselves. So far, Terminators don't feel tough. Marines, I like that they're kind of pillowy. They're not as tough as you think they are, but it puts the emphasis on the bigger stuff, which I think is good. But so far, so good. I really like it. It scales surprisingly well. We still played a fun 90-minute game at 600 points. And what that tells me as a designer is, when a game scales really well, you have your resilience to damage output right. That balance is correct. You have the right amount of damage being done to take damage. That is the thing you're always trying to keep in balance. And that's very hard in once you get past 2 armies, that is a very hard thing to do. It is, I would say, if I was to say what the fundamental thing they are chasing in every Warhammer Mass Combat game, that they can never get right. It is the balance between durability, between offense and defense. Is those two things need to be in balance, because some people just do them out of balance, and those typically are in the way that scenarios work in Warhammer, which is standing in a place longer than anyone else. That means that the thing that wins games is, can I stand in a place longer than anybody else while removing them faster than they can remove me? That is like the key. Now that the game is just standing in circles, that is the only metric by which everything is basically measured. And the ways in which you remove pieces and survive can change army list to army list. But the balance, when you have to balance 16 to 20 of those things, it becomes far harder, because it becomes about, well, what kinds of ways do you remove pieces and what kinds of ways do things survive? And the butting up, the friction between those things becomes a problem. So like, do I survive because I have lots of wounds or because I have lots of armor? This army has lots of things that break through armor. This thing has lots of things that does lots of wounds. And how do you keep that in balance, basically, to make it so that one thing doesn't just like get above the pack? And they are obsessed with that now. It is the thing that destroyed War Machine and therefore a problem. So far, Legions feels like, because there's only 2 factions, they have that stuff pretty well in balance. And that's also helped by having an alternating activation system that is integral to keeping that stuff in balance, because you can't just you can't put it all your damage and then take all the damage and then take all the damage and put it all the damage, which is the way that I go, you go system, as opposed to an alternating activation system, creates a big dilemma, which is one I would argue Warhammer has. Gizmo Math Boy says, if you consider doing some kind of gaming using papercraft or minimalist kinds of miniatures, I'm probably several Sigma. It's probably several Sigma outside your core audience, since I'm very miniature minimalist, but it would be a show way of miniature gaming without needing time, talent, and space and money. I am a member of one of my favorite Facebook groups, which is Super Cheap Wargaming, and they do this a lot. I had thought about doing a design challenge one day, where I was like, could I go take my phone with me to the dollar store and be like, I have a $25 budget. I can buy $25 worth of shit from this dollar store. Can I make a compelling game using just the materials I find here? And it can only be the materials I find here, which means I have to write it in a notebook. I have to buy the pencil or pen I'm going to write it with. I have to buy the pieces I'm going to play it with, the things I'm going to make terrain out of. I thought that would be fun to do, and it still might be something I'm going to do, and I'm definitely considering doing that, because I think that, you can definitely have a compelling miniature game that doesn't require a lot of assets and doesn't require you to buy anything from other people if you're a bit creative, and I've always wanted to try doing some kind of minimalist game like that, so it definitely might be something that I do in the near to distant future. I don't know when, but it's something I've thought about for sure. Eskedai says Grimdark Blues Clues. Kelly Davis, I love Without a Trace by the Black Angels. It's fantastic. Kyle Rovigug says, finally got you live. Well, thanks, man. I'm glad you're here. Loser says Grimdark, I Love Lucy. I mean, Grimdark, I Love Lucy is the WandaVision. That's literally that's what that is. I think it's actually interesting. Just kind of Lurk says, remember the episodes of Star Trek TNG with alternate realities that were super grimdark? That's more to be explored there. Definitely. It's funny because I would love to do something with Star Trek, but Lower Decks has done everything I would ever want to do with Star Trek. Lower Decks has deconstructed Star Trek in such a incredible way. I don't feel like I have anything to add to the conversation. It is such a wonderful exploration of what makes Star Trek Star Trek. I don't think I could do it better than Lower Decks. The same way that Picard is a product, Picard is just shooting nostalgia into my eyeballs, and I'm so here for it. I'm just like, yeah, give it to me. Give it to me. Jordy, show me the museum of every Star Trek ship. I love this. Give me more of this. Lower Decks is the subversion of that. And I love that. I'm here for it. My biggest thing I'm mad about is that they never in TNG, tied up the plot end of the parasitic organism that infiltrates the Federation, and that before they blow up the whatchamacallit, the mother host one, and it kills all the other ones, they send a signal into deep space, and we never get a payoff for that. That was like a 5-episode arc too, where there's multiple episodes where you don't know what's going on. Picard goes like on trial at one point, like the security division comes in and is like investigating him. He has to like collude with a bunch of captains that like stuff's going on. Those captains start going missing or getting killed. There's such a dark arc in TNG, and they pay it off with the episode where they kill, I can't remember his name. It's not Barclay, but he's like a Barclay type. He's this like Commander Derek, Commander something like that. But he shows up basically and like kicks Riker out of being like the first officer and like watches over him for a while. It's a very good storyline, but they never really pay it off where that signal goes to. Corey says, "Hey Ash, I love the Last of Us media review. I'm glad. It's so funny that so far this Last of Us, like Grimdark media, has been as divisive as I was hoping it was going to be. I think the first 3 comments in that video were, I fucking hated this game. Neil Druckmann's a hack. It's garbage. I just posting a video about The Last of Us 2 elicited the same amount of rage as, because there was no chance that they'd watched the video yet, because it was within like the first 3 minutes of it going live. I got these comments. Just posting a video on the topic of that game was as divisive, was just illustrated how divisive it was for me. And I like the first comment being like, I fucking hated this game. I was unbearable to play through. It made me laugh so hard this morning. It made me so happy because it's exactly like when you watch the video, like our like dissection of it, Jay and I are in very different camps over it, but the the obvious divisiveness of it was never more evident than like the first couple comments on that video. It made me so happy. What else we got here? Discount Nick says, no, Triple Digit Game says there was a post-apocalyptic Charlie Brown webcomic called Grief is Never Good or something like that. Ooh. That sounds like the grimdark version of Garfield, where it's just John without Garfield. It's just a man going insane and talking to himself. They're so funny. You just take Garfield out of every comic that has John in it, and it's just John being a fucking maniac. It makes me so happy. Look those up. They're really good. John Ashley Smith says, I think it's a good thing that flying transports is so dangerous to use. Yeah, for sure. Lurkin Eagle says, F's in chat for War Machine. I don't know what that means. Kyle Rovagug says, I do some miniature gaming in Roll-D20. Yeah, a lot of people do apparently. Roll-20 and, of course, Tabletop Simulator. The pandemic was really good for, I think, people stretching to like find alternative ways to play miniature war games and tabletop games together. And I love that became like a thing. Lee W says, RPG with the time travel or darker versions of the Red Dwarf crew. Oh, man, the Red Dwarf stuff with the alternate timelines. The multiverse timeline, like where Rimmer's a hero. The Crimea Kipper version of Rimmer, where he's like a hero. But that's like the darkest timeline. It's so good. Red Dwarf is incredible. Red Dwarf is a fucking BBC treasure. Remick, Commander Remick. Thank you, Jack Fletcher. Yeah, the conspiracy aliens were never really resolved. It is tragic. It is such a it was such a good, dark, it was one of those things that differentiated like TNG from the original series really early on in Star Trek. And it was so dark and didn't resolve episode to episode. Like it was one of those first times that you had like a plot hook go episode to episode through the series. And I loved that. I thought that was fantastic. And then Lorcan Eagle says, yeah, originally the conspiracy aliens were going to be the same race as what became the Borg. Yeah. Yeah, it was like an unfollowed, they replaced them with the Borg. The Borg became the like global nemesis, but the parasite, and I think the idea was they wanted to do something that was more body horror. It's hard to have people just turning evil. Like they ended up getting more budget, and so they did the Borg because you could have more prosthetics and like a more obvious body horror thing with the takeover. But you're right, the Borg and the conspiracy, the parasitic organism, they follow that same story hook writing wise of your friends becoming the enemy, where your friends get taken over, and they follow that to the end with Locutus, which might have originally in the writing been Picard getting infected by the parasitic alien and them having to deal with that. If you imagine those two plot lines going those two different directions, how cool would that have been? Brian Sheen, there's a Simpsons Akira crossover called Bart Kira. For real? See, I haven't watched recent Simpsons, and by recent Simpsons I mean anything after the Simpsons movie, really, that much. Mostly because I can't watch it with my kids. The Simpsons became too adult like the last 15 seasons for my kids and I to watch together. Whereas I can easily watch the first 10 seasons of The Simpsons with my kids, and there's some innuendo, but it's not too adult for them to understand, right? And so I haven't really watched it. I didn't realize that was a thing. I did realize there was a Simpsons X-Files crossover, which is fantastic and actually has like Gillian Anderson and David Duchovny being complete fucking maniacs in it. It's the one where Mr. Burns is an alien in the woods and Homer gets drunk and bumps into him, and it's the I bring you love or I bring you peace. And it's just Mr. Burns having his eugenics treatments to like keep him endlessly alive. His like cryogenic treatment. His, what's the 40K term for that? He's having his rejuvenate process done to him, which is very funny. Disgruntled friend scenes with Ross talking and the laugh track removed are pretty grimdark. Yeah, he's a maniac too. Brian Sheen, a panel by panel redrawing of Akira with Simpsons characters. It's amazing. Shit, I'll have to watch that. That sounds amazing. Kelly Davis says, my company has just ordered us back to the office full time. Pandemic, Warhammer Fantasy is over. Okay. Kudos Buddha is here. And then there's an out-of-print Red Dwarf RPG from Treadhead's Workshop. I guess that was something I was not aware of, but that is something that tracks that they would do Red Dwarf as an RPG. Although I don't really know, you'd have to kind of play the player protagonist because everyone on the ship is dead. Like, do you just have another mining ship and another crew of like 4 weird survivors where only one of them's human? Also, in the alternate universe, Red Dwarf, wasn't it just that everyone was a woman? Wasn't that like the alternate timeline? Like, they just flipped it and like gender swapped everybody. There's like a female Rimmer and like a female Lister and like female Crichton or whatever. Female Holly. It's just like basically Holly in a wig. That's such a good show. If I remember correctly, someone did a Bart Kira movie trailer, which is a frame-by-frame remake of the OG Akira cinematic trailer. I'm going to have to check that out. All right, I think we are done. Oh, yeah, it's 1:02. We're done. We're done. This is actually finished. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the free... I guess I'll make this a thing now because I did it by accident because I'm a moron. I hope you guys enjoyed the free everybody live stream. And next week we'll be back to patrons only, and this will get reposted later. Thanks for everybody that hung out in the chat. And thanks for everybody who put a question in the mailbag. I will repost the mailbag for next week if you didn't miss this or you didn't get this live. And yeah, and we'll hang out next Monday. So happy Monday, everybody. Have a great rest of your week and a great day. And I will chat with you later.